Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack. I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project and the host of this podcast. The Swan Song Project is a charity. We're based here in Leeds, England, and we help people who are facing the end of their lives or dealing with bereavement to write and record an original song. We believe in celebrating lives, making memories, and leaving legacies. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, you can visit our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk. The podcast features songwriters. Every episode I have a different songwriter on. I ask them to share with me one of their songs, and we talk about how they wrote it. I ask them to share a songwriting tip, and I also ask them for a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. This episode features Paulusma, and it's a really interesting conversation. Polly's got some really interesting insights into songwriting, and has done some interesting approaches to her own writing, which was really nice to hear about. She's very clearly thoughtful about her songwriting and has given it a lot of thought. So it was a really fascinating conversation. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. If you do, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. We've got lots more great guests coming up that you're not going to want to miss. But without further ado, here is Paulusma on the Swan Song Podcast. Enjoy. Okay, today I'm here with Paulusma. Thanks for joining me, Polly.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really looking forward to speaking to you. So this is the Swan Song Podcast. For anyone new to the show, every episode I have a different songwriter on, and we do the show in three sections. So first, we're going to have one of Polly's songs, and we're going to talk about how she wrote it. Then in section 2, I'm going to ask Polly for a songwriting tip. And in section 3, we're going to talk about a song that's meaningful to Polly in some way relating to bereavement. So over to you, Polly. Which song of yours have you chosen to speak to us about today?
Well, I thought I'd share something about Dunstable Downs, which is a new song of mine. It's going to be on my next record, which is coming out March 2025.
Brilliant. Yeah. So is this an exclusive for Dunstable Downs? Has it not been released anywhere?
It is an exclusive, yeah.
I love it. I love it when we get an exclusive. Brilliant. So this is Dunstable Downs by Paulusma.
If trauma is a breach in the mind's experience of time, then I am back there with you. The kitchen's dark wooden panelling cupping us like old hands. The life raft of the Arga to which we all clung. The corner cupboard stuffed with medicines and bottles of Chardonnay. The cobwebs and the dead flies. The tapestries, the ashtrays, the suit of armour, the grand piano in the musty gloom of the stairwell, the portraits up the stairs, mock grandeur, the wood fires popping and chattering in cavernous fireplaces, the cellar that on demand disgorged a steady flow of wine, the radio babbling to itself softly in the bedroom, the dogs and the plates and the guests that littered your life. Most of all, your faltering beauty. The warmth of an apple in your face. Your fingers dry from raising so many suns. Your knuckles red from so much thankless service. Dependable, susceptible, disposable. Oh, could I lose all daughter now? Dependable, susceptible, disposable. Oh, could I lose all daughter now? I could lose myself. Step out of a glider, collide with her up there on Dunstable Downs, where she floats on the breeze. If I lose my way, drift into the weather as light as a feather, she'll not make a sound as she trips through the trees, going once, going twice, but my spin the wheel, roll the dice, put it all on for sale. Fool me once, fool me twice. Always knew you were a gambler. Now it's going for a song, and I've gone and made my getaway. Now she's found a way, stepped out of the skin he's been keeping her in, like an old dressing gown. And she's free as the clouds in her negligee, in a white cotton shift. Now the thermals, they're lifting her up over town and away from the house, going once, going twice. Put my heart under the hammer, spin the wheel, roll the dice, put it all on up for sale. Fool me once, fool me twice. Always knew you were a gambler. Now it's going for a song, and I've gone and made my getaway. She is young again. All the weight and the strain washed away with the rain up on Dunstable Downs. Now she floats on the breeze.
Okay, brilliant. So that was Dunstable Downs. Yeah, it's a powerful, powerful song, Ollie, and it feels very atmospheric. It really kind of creates a strong. For me, it created very strong, like quite a visual thing, which is unusual for me. I'm not. I feel like I'm not a very visual person, but for some reason, listening to this, I have quite clear images in my mind. But yeah, what can you tell us about writing it? How would you like to start?
Well, it's the first thing to say about it is that it came from a dream, and I know that that's quite a common sort of origin story for so many songs. It's about I don't know if you had somebody like this in your life when you were growing up, but my best friend's mum was really amazing. She was like a second mum to me. She was like an adult in my life who I could go and talk to, who was a little bit more disinterested, someone who you get a measured response from and a kind of ask their opinion, but they weren't so involved in your life like your own mum and dad or whatever. And she was just amazing, and I loved her very much. And she died a few years ago, and it was quite sad, the circumstances under which she died. She lost her home, and she was very distressed, and so those last few weeks were very discombobulated. And I wish I could have seen her, but I didn't. I wasn't able to see her. But I wrote the song shortly after I found out that she died. And I had this very, very vivid dream. It was a bit like, I don't know if you've ever read Wuthering Heights, or if you've ever listened to Kate Bush's Wuthering Heights. It's sort of the same. There's this ghost, Kathy, who comes tapping at the window. And I kind of dreamt that this wonderful lady in my life was really young again, and she was flying she was like up in the clouds in a white nightie, a bit like an angel, but not, more like a kind of, is it genus locus, the kind of the spirit of a place? It was like that. She was very attached to her house, and she was very, very sad when she lost it. And I just had a dream of her over her house, like up in the sky somehow. It was just so vivid. So I'm really happy that you said it was a very visual song for you, because it was a very visual song for me as well. Like writing it, I could just shut my eyes and picture it. So I'm really glad that I communicated something of that.
Is that something that you've done, that you do in your writing otherwise? And so was it quite clearly like an image in the dream, or was it like a full story that you were then conveying, or what was
It was more like a sense. It was like a sense that she was that's where she was now. Like that her spirit somehow was free of all this rubbish, all the stuff that worries us down here, and she was just kind of somehow above it all and out of it now, thank goodness. It was kind of a relief dream. I was like feeling like, oh, okay, you're wherever you are, it's okay now. I have no rules about my songwriting. They come from all different kinds of places, and there have been some dreams. There's another dream song on the record, actually. Last night I had a dream, which is different. But I don't know, we get inspiration from all funny, kooky kinds of places, don't we? But it was actually through a workshop. I was doing a poetry workshop. There's this wonderful thing called the Writing Hours, which takes place in January. It's 2 poets who it's just an hour writing group on Zoom in those dark January mornings. It's just brilliant when the world is sort of still asleep after Christmas, and they read 1 or 2 lovely poems, and then they give you a prompt, and then you just write, and there's like 200 heads on a screen all just kind of busy scratching away at their paper. It's a special thing. I'm hoping to do it again next year, but I did a week of it out of the 4 weeks. I did 1 week a couple of years ago, and this song came directly from one of those prompts. Would you like to see the page? I can show you.
Yeah.
Let me get it up. Here it is.
I was saying to Polly before we started that this is something that comes up a lot on the podcast. We'll talk about the notes of how things develop, but we've never had one seen on the show before. And I apologize to anybody who's maybe listening to the audio version of this, but we'll try and describe it to you as best we can. But we've got a picture of Polly's notebook with some handwritten notes in it. So
I think the prompt was, "What did you lose?"
Ah, interesting.
Or something about losing something. I think that's what the initial kind of tickler was.
And so
we still thought of her and what she'd lost. Everything went. It was one of those stories.
And so was this around when you had the dream around that same time?
And I'd had the dream the night before, so it was right up on my. When something's right up at the front of your mind because you've just experienced it. When someone gives you a prompt like that, it's just amazing what falls out. But I just love the fact that first line that I sing, "I could lose myself, step out of a glider, collide with her up there on Danceable Dance," that just fell out straight away, and I never got rid of that. It felt like it set the whole thing up, but I have no idea where it came from, other than this dream. But the way that it rhymes with it, the internal rhyme of it, felt like I used to sit in her garden. I don't know if you know Dunstable. Have you ever been there?
No.
It's on the edge of there's chalk hills there. It's like the edge of the Chilterns they cut across, and there's a gliding school, so you can go and do gliding there on the thermals, because the hills, there's something about the hills that means that it's perfect conditions for taking a glider up on the thermals. And I never went up in one, but I used to watch them. I used to lie in the garden and just watch these planes, just the kind of meditative circling. It was wonderful to watch. It's like watching goldfish or something. It's like it's really calm. And so I'm not surprised that the dream brain fused these things together.
Yeah.
But I just loved it. I love all the rhymes. It was a really persistent little set of words.
Yeah, and I was thinking when I heard it, it feels like it's kind of quite an unusual position for the internal rhyme, but it works really well. So that kind of makes sense that if it just kind of came out that way, rather than, it feels like it would be, if I guess you were kind of structuring I don't know, yeah, something about it just struck me as like unexpected, but that it sits really nicely.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing. But the other thing to note, just before I leave the page, is that the final verse, I wrote next. And I don't know if other songwriters do that, but I love the concept of like top and tail. Like, you get the end point, you get the beginning point, and then you kind of spend months. It took a couple of months to write it in the end.
Yeah.
It took ages for the middle bit to sort itself out. But I sort of, on day one, I had the first line and I had the ending. So it's like, okay, I know where I've got to end up. I just got to figure out how to get there.
That's an interesting, yeah. That's interesting. What I've noticed about it is there's lots of questions in your notes.
Oh yeah. Oh, should I go back?
It was quite nice. There's lots of like, what is this? And then, so what is that? What did he promise?
Yeah. Then there's a long list. There's also over here, what did you lose? What did everything? Searching in the clouds for your wedding ring. So this was stuff that I ended up jettisoning. I didn't use it, but this was something I was obviously worrying on as a chorus, but I didn't use it in the end.
And is that so that feels like quite a nice way of developing if you've just got a basic concept, to ask yourself questions about the characters and what's going on in it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great way to open a little doorway in the head, isn't it? And it's surprising what falls out sometimes.
Yeah. How much of it is factual and how much of it was fictional, if any?
I tend to write a lot from real. I find it quite hard, although sometimes, when it's obviously somebody else's story, it's a bit hard. I have asked permission from this fan because my best friend, obviously I'm still very close to, and it was his mum, and they've lost their mum, and you don't want to go writing a song that's kind of, I'm always nervous about this idea of being mawkish or feasting on someone else's suffering. I think you have to be quite careful. But on the other hand, they know that I loved her as well. Like, she was really close to me. It wasn't like I was just writing about someone I'd never met. But I was careful because a lot of it's real. And actually, the husband doesn't come off very well in it. he's with us still, and I love him, but he's a rogue, and he knows that too. So, I guess you have to have a bit of liberty to be able to tell a story. And life is always complicated, isn't it? So I recognize in the reality of the situation, there's always two sides to every story or more. But it's quite nice to write with unadulterated love, just to be loyal and go, I feel sad for my friend. And it doesn't necessarily have to be rational, I think, in the universe of a song, but it can have conviction. In fact, I think it probably has to, maybe, ? I don't know.
Yeah. Did it feel different in the writing? Like, were you thinking at any point when you were writing it of how's this going to land with my friend in this situation?
No, I was just writing about my relationship with her. It was only afterwards. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. I don't know. I never know what I'm doing when I'm writing a song, especially when I get into the fire of it. It's like, my friend Kath describes it as running downhill. And that's exactly, you're not thinking about anything except what's the next word? Where's this coming from? It's like pulling something, I don't know, like pulling a splinter out or something. You just kind of have to get to the end of it. And then you can kind of go, okay, what have I got? What is this? Is it even a keeper? You never really know, do you?
Yeah. And you say it took you a couple of months to write with it?
I think so. I think this one, it's always so varied. It's usually around 2 weeks. That's the rough ballpark, but some are written in 15 minutes. One took 8 years. Everything in between. So it's the same for you, right?
Yeah.
Or not? Maybe you're different. What's your process like? Is it
again? Yeah, very varied. But mine, I think I tend to be fairly quick. I thought I was quite slow. Then I've spoken to other people who take a lot longer than I do. But I tend to have ideas for long periods of time before I complete them.
Interesting.
Well, I have a mix. I have songs that come, they have the 10-minute songs like everybody does, where you sit down, and they're often the ones that I haven't thought about before, where something comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Whereas when I've got an idea for something that I'm quite excited about, they tend to take longer. I don't know if it's because I'm more precious about them. I have like a greater expectation that, some kind of lyric I came up with that I think is going to work really well. I put more pressure on it. Whereas if I just sit down and see what comes out, they tend to come really quickly. But yeah, it varies a lot. Do you have any kind of standard writing routine, or is it as and when you've got time? And
I get into periods of routine, and that involves morning pages every day, like always. And I try and just do The Artist's Way. I go round and round that book. I just love it. Really helps. I think there are so many good things in there, like the artist date. It's really like, who has time for the artist date, right? But actually forcing yourself to do it is really great. And collaborating with people is always wonderful as well. I really love co-writing. So when I'm in that flush and I'm writing lots, then I'm very strict. But like right now, I'm not, because I feel absolutely exhausted having made this album. And I just need to step away for a bit. I think my head is a bit fizzy, and I think it can get a bit overwound and a bit strung out. I mean, I'm bipolar as well, which which has its own little curves, and I have to respect them. And sometimes they're useful, and sometimes I think you just have to know when it's all got a bit too hot. You need to back off a bit. So so I'm giving myself a fallow period at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's not like but when I'm in it, I'm in it, and I am really disciplined about it.
Yeah. And that feels, sorry.
No.
I was going to say, that feels quite natural in terms of when, because now you've got an album that's recorded that you're preparing to release. Like I would always do that. I'd have a period where like I was writing, then I'd have, I've got a set of songs now, this is my next album. Then like recording and releasing and promoting, and like sometimes then a bit of, re-inspiring after one block of taking in ideas before getting back to work on a new batch of things. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds really sensible. I did a stupid thing at the end of it wasn't stupid, it was amazing. I went off and got I'd got funding to go and write in a cave for 10 days in France. And if I didn't use it then, I was going to lose the money. So I finished mixing this album at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. And on the Thursday morning, I was on a Eurostar. And I went and sat in the cave for 10 days, and I wrote another 6.5 songs in this cave.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I don't know. I don't know what it is. It was amazing. It was amazing to go and do a project which was just like, this is probably the one moment in your life when you really don't have to write any songs at all. just done this massive thing of like the next album is like 19 tracks. It's so long. It's 2 hours long. I mean, it's just like I really don't need writing anymore. But I just had to go and do it, and it was beautiful. It was a lovely experience. But I think now I've deserved a bit of fallow time. I think I just need to. Yeah. I think it's important to respect that, actually, to know whatever your brain is doing, to give it what it needs. I'm a big believer in crop rotation when it comes to creativity. And I think the fallow period is like when you dig the manure back into the soil. Like you go to art shows, and you go to sticker shops and buy glitter, and you do all that silly play stuff that just makes you feel good, and fill it all up again. And if you don't, you just get, I think there's a tendency to get wiped out.
Yeah.
So I believe in the whole lot, like the discipline of the crop rotation, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. And I'm the same of that. When I'm working on something, I have to have a routine. I found that like fairly recent. You didn't notice when I was younger because I just had a more regular songwriting routine. But now I kind of have to consciously make time in my schedule for it. Yeah. And if I have one session, I don't know when my next one's going to be. I find it really hard for those bigger ideas that I know need that bit of work. I find it really hard to get into them if I don't know when the next time's going to be. That makes sense. Knowing that, well, if I don't, whether I get to today, I'll be back at it tomorrow. That's okay. Whereas if it's like, I don't know when my next session's going to be, I find it hard to get into that same spot.
Yeah. A thread.
Yeah. Needing that consistency in some way.
Mm.
What was the Cave Songs experience like then?
I've got lots of photos and whatnot I could show. Actually, well, it was just beautiful. So it was actually, I mean, not coincidentally, my best mate lives in France. The guy that is the Dunstable Downs connection is that they ended up this family moved to France in the end, and Jace lives on a farm in France and they have a forest on their farm they think it's a troglodyte cave. I mean, it's remarkable. It's this funny little hovel, and I'd seen it, and I just thought that would be such a special place just to withdraw to just for a bit. It's got a very strong spiritual vibe, and I thought how cool it would be to kind of do a project which revolved around a technique of songwriting I've developed actually, which is called creative square breathing. I developed it when I taught on an Arvon course a couple of years ago with a friend of mine, Catherine Williams, who's a wonderful songwriter. And we did a lot of meditating. And I realized that it was really helping my songwriting, that having that opportunity to just clear my mind was having a massive benefit for dealing with ideas, like being able to allow ideas through without getting all the clutter getting in the way, a bit like morning pages do. I mean, it's all similar. It's trying to get life out of the way, isn't it, so that we can hear, the antenna can work. But I developed this thing of square breathing. Like one of my kids has anxiety, and I remember us being given the square breathing and being taught the technique with the finger, like trying to just regulate your breathing. And I thought, well, this is a kind of regulating the mind type thing. So let's say you meditate for 15 minutes. Then you look at something beautiful for 15 minutes, and that's like inhaling, like you're getting inspiration. And then you meditate again for 15 minutes, which is like another holding of the breath. And then you try and write a song. So
15 minutes as well.
Yeah. Well, with me, I'm like, that bit can be as long as you like, never stop. Yeah. Even if you're in the middle of a good flow, don't stop. But it's like never wake a baby. Never stop writing a song, isn't it? These rules. So I developed this technique. I teach songwriting on the Songwriting Masters at ICMP, and I've been sharing this idea with my students and seeing if it worked, and they seem to be getting really positive results. So I applied for funding to try this idea out, and I wanted to take pretty hardcore religious texts into this cave space as the breathe in, as the inhale. Of all different faith, like nothing, not favoring any particular tradition, just things that I've been really curious to read. Julian of Norwich was one, The Cloud of Unknowing. So those are more Christian ones, but I don't know how to say it, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk. I had some Rumi, I had the Rubaiyat, and I had some Ram Dass, so more Buddhist and meditative and Hindi, and I had a Bhagavad Gita as well. I read that in there, like just trying to read those texts in a place where you've just withdrawn from, the mobile phone didn't work down there. I had a little fire. It was amazing. It was amazing.
It does sounds really good.
It was amazing. And I wrote some really lovely songs. I was just trying to write songs in response to them.
Yeah. Not trying to put them into some song form. It was just songs that were inspired by them, basically. Yeah, that sounds like a lovely experience. And funny enough, I was talking to somebody yesterday about who's doing research about songs from the effect of place, I guess, on writing songs. And it is a really big thing, isn't it, of the space that you write in that really influences what you're doing. Yeah, well, I made a point of I swankily call it locational songwriting, but yeah, exactly. What I did do was I had one of these little dudes. I had this one, and I took it down to the cave with me. So it wasn't just that I wrote them, I actually recorded them there as well. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what I'm going to do with the recordings. They're very wonky, imperfect things. I mean, you know what it's like writing when you record and write on the same day. Yeah, it's quite fruity, right? Because it's like a foal just kind of getting up on its legs. But there's something amazing about the recordings because there's this crackle of the fire. You can hear the rain,
hear all the birds. I love them. So they're like almost like they're an audio photograph of that time. And I'm quite interested to explore the possibility of maybe taking the recordings and working with someone, I don't know, maybe a cellist or something, to kind of put them into a setting, a bigger work somehow. I don't know. Or maybe release them as they are. I'm not sure. But it was an amazing. But to come off the back of like one massive project and like dive, you know, or face plant straight into another. It was a really interesting. It was interesting to be that tired, and to kind of go into a project and see what effect that has on songwriting. It really simplified everything. The songs that I wrote there are very different to anything I've written before, and that may be a brilliant thing. I don't have any judgment. I'm not really sure, but I can see that they're different. They were much simpler and rawer and.
Cool. Yeah. If you do decide to share them, I'd love to hear them sometime.
Yeah, no, I will.
Quick practical question on that before we get back to a few more things I'd like to ask you about Dunstable Downs. Did you have a chair with you in the cave, or did you sit on the floor?
No, I sat on a cushion.
Sat on a cushion. And how long were your days in the cave?
I'd spend 4 hours in there, and then come back. I had a little gîte. I'd come back and then I'd thread back down again, and then I went back to the gîte and I'd record there, and like there was a piano in the gîte, so I did some stuff there. I'd do some writing in the gîte, and then I'd go back to the cave, and then I'd record. You know, I always started the songs in the cave. Sometimes I retreated to tinker, and then I went back down. It was quite cold. It was not the warmest.
Yeah.
So, but I did a sort of 4 hour stint. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds great. Back to Dunstable Downs. So the song has a prologue I want to ask you about. So what was your decision, I guess, for having a prologue, and was I guess I'll let you go from there rather than me. I'll do this a lot where I'm like, was it this or was it this? It was all my ideas of how I thought it might come about, but I might as well ask you. How did it come to have a prologue?
Well, all the songs on this record have that. They have my prologue that leads into the song. And I guess it came about because I'm really obsessed with the interplay between prose and song. It's like I feel like I've been dancing along that border all my life. Like my research project for my thesis was all about Angela Carter's writing and her singing, and how her relationship with song is like embedded in the way that she writes. And I knew that the way that I respond to her writing is the way I respond to Nick Drake or Joni Mitchell. Like my hairs all go because I hear the music in her writing, and I've always engaged with literature as a musical text. And I think I've always thought of songs as literary texts as well. I don't really see the boundary between them. That's the honest truth. And my last record was called Pivot on Which the World Turns. And there was a song on that record called Bracklesham Bay, and I'd started to play around with this idea. There's a little prologue. It was something from my morning pages that had kind of led to the song. And what I realized was that all my songs come out of prose. There's a moment in my morning pages, I'll be writing, la 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 la, writing prose, and then suddenly, boom, we're into a song. And it's like, how? Where's the quick? There's like this weird hinterland between the two states. Is it like a quicksand thing between the two? And I just wanted to explore that, really. And so quite a lot of the prologues that I've included on the record are just that. They are the moments in my morning pages where I'm writing and it turns into a song. Because I think it's interesting.
No, it's very interesting
to me. I'm just like, playing them live is really cool. I did the whole thing across 2 nights last summer, and I did notice something really interesting, which is that usually when you're playing a song to a room full of people, they might sort of be a bit fidgety for the first couple of lines of the first verse. You're kind of getting them by line 3, and then by line 4. They're with you and they arrive in your lap just in time for the chorus. That's kind of what, if it's working, if it's going to work, you know, you've got them at that point. But what I noticed with the prologues was really interesting was that it's almost like a drag net, you know, those nets that have a kind of drawstring purse like that catch. It's horribly cruel, isn't it? But and I kind of feel like the prologue does that job, but does it differently. So it catches everybody in the room. They might be fiddling around, fannying about with their phones or whatever they're doing. You know, they're sending that last text message, whatever they want to do. And you just slowly pull the strings during the course of that prologue. And so by the time you open your mouth to sing that first line, they're there. It's great. I didn't expect that to happen. I was just doing it because I wanted to, because I was interested in this relationship between what is a song, what is a poem, what is prose. Who cares? They're all the same. Look how musical everything is. But from a performance perspective, it's actually also really useful.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of, it sucks everyone in, and then it's lovely. So the prologue is absolutely, for Dunstable Downs, is absolutely my memory of that kitchen, of my friend's mum's kitchen. And I think it just gives you a bit more context.
Yeah.
So that then when you get to the flying woman in the clouds, it's like you're not completely, what the hell is this?
Yeah. Yeah, it really sets the scene.
I kind of got you to Dunstable already, you know, and you've been in the kitchen for a bit, and now you're coming up with me into the clouds.
Yeah.
Gave me
And I agree that I love it when the spoken parts in songs or in performances, it certainly can it really kind of build, often builds anticipation, I think, for when the song starts as well, which is really nice. But the question I was going to ask you about it was, so I guess if you knew that all the songs were going to have one, that would feature into this. But is there ever a point when so I guess having the content, if you knew what you were trying to say, is there ever a conscious decision about this is going to work as prose in a prologue, or this section will, I'll rephrase this part of the story or this part of the character in to fit with the melody? Was that ever a decision, or was it just it all came together very naturally?
It definitely all came together very naturally, but it's interesting that there are some on the record with other songs. There are some places where the prologues really, it was very hard to know what they were. They could so easily, with one little nudge, they could just become a song if they wanted to. But I've just decided to leave them where they are.
Yeah.
I don't know. They seem to tell me what they want to do.
Yeah.
There are all these little fragments. I mean, I found them all through my notebooks. A lot of them are very subconscious stuff, you know, stream of consciousness stuff, but they all relate to the song that's coming next, coming after them.
That's really interesting. And one of the reasons why I was so intrigued with this was, so it comes up in Swan Song from time to time, where we quite regularly have spoken word sections in Swan Songs, which is partly for someone who doesn't want to sing their song but wants to have their voice on it. Sometimes people will just have a little spoken message, and then one of the team will be singing the rest of the song. And sometimes it comes up where it is that where there's something they really want to say in the song that just doesn't feel like it's going to fit with the melodic structure of it, and then it feels like, well, let's just have it as a spoken intro. And particularly what happens in Swan Song a lot is if people have very specific things that they say to their loved ones, where it's like, we can't bend that at all because that's what you say to them, so it needs to be exactly like that. And if we try and rhyme something with it, it's going to sound really forced. So let's just put something spoken in that's just you saying that, and then the rest of the songs can stick to its tune and stuff like that. But I find those conversations really interesting sometimes. Like, should we just have this spoken and have exactly word for word as you want it, or should we try and flex it and bend it to fit it in with whatever tune we've got and rhyme structure?
I just think that whatever the discourse, whatever it is, has a really strong will and mind of its own, and you can always feel when something is resisting what you're trying to do to it. I don't know, I've learned the hard way, it's best to just let it be what it is rather than trying to force it to be something that you want it to be for the sake of some exterior logic. It's like, no, they know what they know what they are, they know what they want to be, and they feel right when they feel right when they're in the right place, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's great, Polly. Really interesting. Let's move into section 2 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guests for a songwriting tip. So what would your tip be for us today, Polly?
Well, we've done morning pages already, haven't we? That's the really big one, I think.
Just to reiterate, if anyone who's not heard of morning pages before, this is writing, normally writing a set page first thing in the morning. So it's a practice that comes from that book.
Yeah, I've had this book for more than 20 years, and I must have done it, I don't know, hundreds of times. Gone around. It's a 12-week course, but one of the main tools is the morning pages. 3 pages of crap. If you look, like just whatever falls out of your head. I don't know if you can see this because that flaps in my hand. There we go. That is my book, my shelf of morning pages from 20 years.
Wow.
And there's a lot of rubbish. It's really amazing. That's the lovely thing about it. You just write whatever comes out of your head. You know, I've got to do the laundry, the lawn needs mowing. What am I going to, it's amazing. And I tend to write 3 pages of A4. She never says 3 pages of what size paper. So you can interpret that as you will.
Yeah.
But I'll write 3 pages of, A4 size. And I find that halfway down page 2, if something's going to happen, that's where it happens.
That's right.
You've managed to creep past your critic. Your inner policeman who's going to shout at you and tell you that you're wasting your time being an artist, and that's all. Halfway down page 2.
Nice. And do you have so do you review your morning pages?
I've just stuck with them all into my album.
Yeah.
I've totally raided them for this project, which has been fun. It's been like a lovely resource to mine. Little gems, because a lot of it is dream language. You're talking. It's like you're talking in your sleep.
Yeah.
Sometimes you tell yourself truths that years later you're like, oh man, I was trying to tell myself that.
Yeah.
It took me 5 years to figure it out or whatever. Other tips. I don't know. I write a lot about. I write about what I know. So if I've got a friend who's going through something, I do tend to. I worry about it. I write, and that's what ends up in the morning pages. I'm writing, and then one thing leads to another. My friends are used to it now. Me cannibalizing.
Yeah. I like that description of it, cannibalizing. I heard Nick Cave talk about that as well, of cannibalizing his life and his friends' experiences and stuff.
And the other thing is, I'd say is, like, if you're writing, I do it every day. A little and often is really, I think, is very productive. I think of it a bit like cream rising to the top of the milk for me. The first 45 minutes of the day, I get all the good stuff. After that, I'm just sort of pushing it around a bit. So I go off and do other things. I think if you can get it in the bank early doors, that's certainly how some people are late night owls. It might be better, But for me, I when I'm on a roll, I'm up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And by 7 or 8, I'm done, and I can get on with the rest of the day and do whatever I need to do. But the good stuff's in the bank. And to not labor it, not to flog a dead, not to flog it all day. I just doesn't.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I used to be much more of a night person. Then the last few years when I've done stuff, I tend to have done it in the morning, and I've really loved it because, as you say, it is like such a different mindset. And that's where I get most of where I look back and like, where did that come from? I haven't, like consciously, I've got no recollection, and like you say, it probably is that kind of like half dream state, which I think is really cool for the songs. And then sometimes people ask me about them, I'm like, I've got no idea what I was thinking about when I wrote this. I don't know what it's about. It just came out that way, which is quite nice in itself.
I think another lovely thing to be able to do is to learn a song that you love, learn how to play it. Because you get to know a song by playing it in a completely different way to just listening to it. I think you can learn. It's such brain food for songwriting to learn how to play other people's stuff. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's something. Well, I certainly had a phase where I felt like, oh no, now I'm writing songs. I shouldn't be playing other people's songs. I should be writing my own songs. Whereas, as you say, it's like it makes your songs better the more songs you learn. And particularly, funny enough, the same conversation I had with the guy about writing in places. I was talking about something. I don't know if I actually did it, but I remember thinking about it, that if I had full days where I was going to be writing, I'd structure it where an hour might be I'm going to play some covers of songs that I really like. I'm going to learn some new songs by artists that I respect for an hour, and then I'm going to do like some lyric writing for an hour. Then I'll do some guitar work for an hour, so trying to structure my day like that, but that being a regular part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's lovely. I don't know if your listeners will be interested, but I have a Substack page which is all about songwriting and like just me musing on different techniques and tips and tricks, and a lot of the content is free, so if anyone's interested, it'd be great. It's called Songwriter on Fire.
Brilliant. And I'll put a link for that in the description, because I'm keen to start looking at it myself as well. We had this bit of a chat about this last week, didn't we? Substack I've not used before, but I'm keen to explore it a bit more.
Maureen went peacefully, and she went in my arms. I could speak to her, but it wasn't enough. There were still things I wanted to say to her. But the end product, even now I can't believe it. I think it's wonderful, and it encapsulates everything of what I wanted it to do. And if I'm feeling down, I can play that, and hopefully it'll lift me up. And if I'm feeling high, let's think about the good times.
If you would like to help more people like John write songs in memory of loved ones, please donate to the Swan Song Project today. Brilliant. So let's move into section 3 now, Polly.
Okay.
This is where I ask my guests what songs mean for them in some way related to bereavement. So which song have you chosen for us for this section, Polly?
So I've chosen a song which was on my last album, which was called The Pivot on Which the World Turns, and the song is called Snakeskin.
Brilliant. So we'll have a listen to that now. So this is Snakeskin.
Snakeskin, like the shape of the shadow that used to be him, left behind. Snakeskin, turn you inside and outside, and nothing remains, just an outline. Your center slithered off, it floated off, a space balloon up to the ether. Oh, beat away on a wingtip. And here's my bent finger, holding onto the string. Snakeskin, all I have, all I hold is this cold leather hand left in mine. But it's snakeskin, desiccated and blown like a husk in the wind of my mind. I'll put it in a box and drop it down into a hole that's 6 feet under. But you've escaped, you floated off, a silver space balloon up to the ether. Oh, beat away on a wingtip. And here's my bent finger, holding on to the string. Holding on to the string.
Okay, that was Snakeskin by Polly Paulusma. It's a beautiful song, Polly. Very powerful. Why did you choose that for this section?
I think it was appropriate because I think it's one of those. I've written quite a lot over the years about bereavement because it's happened in my life and in my extended family's story over and over again. But this song, I think I've just anecdotally, you know, when you play a gig, we play a song at a gig, I think I can see it doing its work.
Mm.
And I'm so touched, and you know, that's all you want as a songwriter, is for the song to make sense to somebody. It doesn't matter what it means to me, it's what it means to you know. And I've noticed it doing good work in rooms, and I like that very much, and I'm very grateful to the songbirds who flew in that day. In fact, I started writing this song, like the tune, that little opening snuck into my head while I was holding my dad's hand. I guess he'd been dead for about 5 minutes and he was cooling down. So I was in the hospice, you know, with him, and he died of lung cancer. And I was very, very lucky to be with him at that time, with my family, my brother and sister and my mum and I. We were round his bed. He did it extremely well. Hats off to my lovely dad. But I was holding his hand and feeling the temperature drop, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And songwriters are funny people. Like, I can't believe that I started thinking of a tune at that point. Like, it's kind of sort of disgusting, but not, because I write because I love to write. It's always the next stage, the kind of what happens to the song afterwards is always secondary. I'm never thinking about that when I'm writing. I'm just thinking about the purity of expression and trying to just put it out how I'm feeling at that moment, you know.
Yeah.
And just feeling the difference. So the snakeskin analogy is just feeling the change in texture of his skin, really. It's just, I know, very literal, but also getting a very strong sense that he'd left the room. And like, it's like, oh, you're not even here anymore. It's very like Dunstable Downs in a funny way. It's like, oh, you're okay now. We're not. We're the ones left holding the dead stuff, but you've gone off somewhere else. It was very cathartic to write. But it absolutely came into my head in that room. And then it took, actually that one was another couple of months one. It took a couple of months to percolate. It took a while for me to be able to articulate all those feelings in the way that I wanted to. But the song is quite short. It's quite simple. There's just 2 verses, which is unusual for me. I usually am a bit more structural, but it just was quite stark, and it felt like, yeah, stark is appropriate for that situation, right? I mean, I don't know, there's all those little micro decisions you make, because the way you express yourself is in all those ways. Like it's not just the words, it's not just the tune, it's not just the chords, but it's also the structure and the shape of the thing. So yeah, so it was wonderful, but it did land in my lap. It feels a bit odd to say that I wrote that one, because it felt like it sort of wrote itself through me. And I know people say that a lot and it sounds really cheesy, but I think that about a lot of my songs, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, probably. Thanks for sharing it. And I was just thinking then, when you were talking about it, so you said, was that a bit of a tune that came to you when you were holding his hand there? Yeah.
And just the image, just the words, feeling all of it, the way that the words and the melody kind of went together, and the sense of it, the touch of his skin, like it all just kind of went in that room. But I couldn't say anything, obviously.
Yeah.
I couldn't really get a notepad out. Please be. But yeah, I just hung on to it, and persistent things like that. Actually, Dunstable Downs is similar. This persistent line, you know, it's funny. But you start off with one little thing, one thing leads to another.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that, you know, obviously that wasn't in the situation, oh, I'm going to start writing a song. It was that, but it feels very much like your attuneness to songs would have been that strong, that in a sense, in a situation of like intense emotion like that would be the way your brain might have processed that through that lens. And there's something that feels really beautiful about that, and really kind of like honest, that it's like, you're experiencing this really intense situation, and then this piece of music, it comes through in a piece of music in some kind of way. There's something that feels really beautiful about that to me.
Yeah. I feel like songwriters have this is a really wonderful, it's a bit of an unfair, like not an advantage, but it's like, it's so like in moments of intense emotion like that, to have it translate itself into something else that brings you joy, like even if that emotion is intense grief. It's a remarkable kind of alchemy. It's like it's changing one thing into another. And I'm not saying I felt immense joy at that moment. I didn't. But I felt the whole experience like that, like whatever that word melody combo is, there's a kind of twisting to it, and that's exactly how I felt. There's something visceral about the way that it moves, and it has brought me a lot of joy since. The best thing is seeing it land with someone else, and to know that you've translated something adequately, that they get there. That's the real magic of it all, is to have someone go, yes, you've put it into words or you've articulated something that I couldn't, or you've helped me realize something about that moment, or I don't know, whatever it is that people use the song for afterwards. All of it is amazing. For something that just came from nothing. I mean, it's like, it's just a strange magic, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's that thing where it's, it came from nothing then, but without the years of dedication to the craft, you'd have had that, it wouldn't have been able to come through you in that way. So it's a bit of both, isn't it? That, it's it came through you in that situation, but you prepared to be able to receive it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
By having that awareness and maturity to it, and and there's, what was the thing I was thinking of then? I was just thinking in terms of, like, it's having the container for that emotion as well, a song being the space to hold it, and how difficult it can be to have words for something like that, but having some kind of, sometimes sometimes you do the words for it, but having an option of, here's a bit of melody that feels like it's captures what I was feeling at that time. It does feel like an extra option that can be incredibly useful in those couple of times.
Yeah, and I think there's an extra element. There's a kind of hidden extra element, which is the music of the words themselves. So, like, there's the words, there's the tune, and there's obviously there's the harmony bit going on as well. There's the guitar or the piano or whatever you've got going on, the instrumentation. But there's also this weird bleed, because the words themselves have an innate musicality. Some words just, I mean, you can see it most in words that don't mean anything. I've heard a wonderful interview with Anaya Smitzel where she talks about Brown Eyed Girl and that na 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 na, like how much that means. That means so much, that joyful na 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 na. I mean, it's nonsense, right? But that word, that sound, the sound of the sound is loaded. And I think Snakeskin, like the way that it's sung, there's something about it that is more than what it means. There's the noise of it on those little notes that move. Is it a bird song or something? There's something about it. I don't know. I feel like there's something else going on that we pick up on because we're amazing humans. There are these little networks of communicative lines. Sometimes I think of myself as like a spider in the center of a web. And we're just always receiving little messages that are paralinguistic, or they're sublinguistic. They're like outside of words, but we know what they mean. Like, for example, if you're in a cafe in Italy, I don't speak Italian. Maybe do you speak Italian, Ben? No? Okay, so neither do I. But I kind of got the odd word, but I really don't understand it when it's in full flow. But I remember sitting in a cafe in Italy, and these lovers in the corner, suddenly, they were just having this massive fight, right? And it was like everybody in the cafe just looked at their plates. And it was like, you couldn't understand what she was saying, but you understood exactly what she was saying, right? That kind of thing. And I think words have this musical meaning, which makes them a bit like music as well. So it's not just words and music. It's like 50% music, 25% the music of the word, and then 25% words. So it's actually 75% music. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, that's really interesting way of looking at it. Yeah. The other thing that I was going to say about it that I thought was really, it's not a metaphor about death that I've heard before, Snakeskin. Whereas, so I feel like lots of the time you do get songs about grief and about losing people, and there's some metaphors that get used repeatedly and some ways of describing it. But the snakeskin one feels like it's very apt. It really works for the description what you're doing, but it's not as common one, which is, I do imagine, would be something that would make it stand out to people and land easier, because it's familiar, but it's new, which is what is often, the sentiment is something people might have come across before, but described that way feels new in some kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a funny one. It was literal, really. I was holding his hand and that's what it felt like. It just felt suddenly like dry and like it was shedding. And then it seemed to work with this idea of like another life, that you shed off this old life, but something new and glorious happens somewhere else. It kind of, the whole thing sort of fit, but it didn't come. It was just a literal observation of my brain going, oh, his hands feel like a snake. I mean, it's like, it was just an observation in the moment that he was not there, that they'd changed temperature, which I'm glad of the experience. I'd never been in a room with somebody dying before. I didn't know. You think of it in the movies, it kind of happens, like it happens and then it's over. It's a process, isn't it? It takes longer than a second. It was an amazing experience. A bit like babies being born. It's same, the old in and out, they don't really, birth doesn't get shown particularly accurately either. But so the image was just really observational, to be honest. But I'm glad that it works.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song, Polly. It's really powerful. But yeah, thank you very much for your time. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
And your new album comes out next
March 2025.
March 2025.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a wait. We were going to try and do it in the autumn, and then I realized that this album's been a really massive labor of love for me, and I'm so excited about it that I suddenly realized it was not worth rushing. I just wanted everybody to have the time they need, because the other thing is it's very long. It's like I just wanted people to have time to absorb it and listen to it properly. I'd love to share it with you, Ben, if you want to hear the whole thing.
Yeah, I'd love to.
So it's a slow burner. It's one of those you've got to turn all the lights off and lie flat on the ground, and preferably have a glass of red wine or whatever the equivalent might be if you don't drink. Sort of low lights and an hour. It's hard to ask for it these days. But
yeah, no, that sounds great, Polly. So I'll put all the links to your website and your social media and everything's in the description, and your Substack. To recommend people go and check out Substack. And yeah, I look forward to hearing the new album.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks a lot, Polly. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll be back with another episode soon.